Hi, it's Gus Krusses, author of Declaring Handy Tools, and it's Thursday, July 20th, 2017. I'm speaking again about these CHT Tile menus, variation on the previous tile design that I've been playing around with. As time goes on, I'll introduce a variety of XML templates to do a variety of tile designs, and of course later on form designs, which you can use inside a Clarion application or alone in a standalone environment such as a browser. But here I've been playing around with a design that allows you to add a little bit of text on the bottom of these tiles. The tiles themselves have a tooltip. We showed you that last time, and as you move from tile to tile you get a little tooltip, but you have to remember that if one is using his finger, there's no such thing as the event hover, which means I'm hovering the cursor over the tile. It causes a tooltip to pop up. But if you're using one of these things exclusively with the finger, you can't hover your finger over a button and hope that the tooltip's going to pop up. So sometimes it's useful, if you don't have on the image a full explanation of what the tile does, to be able to add a little bit of text underneath, or perhaps make a tile that's pure text. We'll deal with that in a separate video, but here we have a tile, the same tile that you saw before, but I've added a little text on the bottom, and I'm going to show you a little bit in the editor how that was done using CHT Document Builder. The eventual document, the document that I'm viewing, is 000 tile advert example. I started out thinking, oh, what if I put a little ad underneath each of these? And I'm thinking that's moving a little too fast. So I decided I'm just going to put a little bit of text on here to add an explanation for those situations where one is using a finger and tooltip isn't available. So you're looking here at the CHT Code Documentation Editor, and another thing I've done here is removed all of the XML tags which are not in use, just to get them out of your face. These XML tags, this opening tag, the one under the yellow line, and this closing tag, the one under the yellow line, represents an area where I can insert either text, depending on what the tag is meant to do, or HTML, a pure HTML code. And each tag represents a position somewhere in the finished HTML document. The finished HTML document is really like a little program that runs inside a browser. And of course, on this window, which is CHT Previewer utility, we're actually running that little HTML program, which causes it to render, which means to display and to behave in the way that HTML normally does. That is to say, I am using this preview facility to generate from this XML skeleton or template a certain amount of HTML code, which is represented by this file, and this file is running inside a browser control on top of a Clarion window. Now this is simply the previewer utility, so these menus are not hooked up. There's no code under these tiles the way that you saw in the actual application. I'm simply using this previewer as a way to see what my XML insertions into these embed points is causing to happen on the window. So the main point of this discussion is, how did I add these little extra red boxes under each tile to add some text? And I'm going to deal with that now. So I did say that all of the empty embed points that are normally available inside this XML template called 00 tile advert XML, I decided, instead of having them clutter this file and draw your attention away, they're not doing anything. Those are empty embed points, just like empty embed points in a Clarion app. I took those out of there so that they wouldn't clutter the text, so that it would be simpler to follow what I'm doing here and where it appears on the screen. So this page title overlay embed point appears in the header, and this CHT Tiles app launcher appears there. And these page title overlays and page title overlay subheads and so on have preset sizes that they appear. Now those preset sizes are under your control, but I won't deal with that at this point. And where they appear on the window is also preset, and again that's determined by the CSS that's on here. And of course the CSS is ultimately infinitely variable. The CSS is the visual aspect of HTML, and that's infinitely variable, the same way that shape and size and color and boldness and underline and so on and position are all controlled by the window editor in a Clarion application. The same applies here. The principle is very similar. So I'm trying to get a Clarion-like design working for you here with some preset values that I've provided in different templates. And this template is 000 tile advert example. The thing you should know is that these designs are infinitely variable, and you can control them if there's something about one of these designs that you don't like. I will touch a little bit on how those designs can be changed very readily with a few simple adjustments, the same way that you adjust them on a Clarion screen designer. So sheet created here is an embed point where normally a date stamp would go. I've simply put a line feed in here just to make the area, this kind of blank area here, so it's a line feed that's going in. And the same applies to header area 1. Header area 1 would normally produce some kind of a title in this area, and I've left it blank, but I put a line feed in there, so that that's what that does. So here in message area 1, I started with a line feed, and then a div area. So I should explain what a div is. A div is a box, and that box, this first div, is this box here. Okay, and that box has characteristics. I'll show you those in a minute. And inside the box, I have this anchor command. Starts there. We can break it out here so that you can see where it starts. Starts there and it closes there, so that's the closing tag for that anchor. And inside this anchor is what's known as an href. This is a link, a web link. And there's the title of the web link, and that's the tooltip. If I touch this window, that tooltip, there we go. So this button exits the window, and there's the tooltip. And then there's an image called tile exit window PNG. So that's that blue image right there. And as you can see below, the anchor structure, which consists, like I said, of a web link and an image. Below that, after that section closes, but still inside this tile div, because the div is opening there and closing here. So that's a box. So inside that box is still some text, and that's the exit application text there. So this is a box, div, tile, and close div. That represents a box, and I can completely control the characteristics of that box. First of all, I already started in the last video to show you that where if you put an image inside a web link, then you get this box, and then the box behaves like a web link, like you click on an ordinary text web link. But now I've added this extra area here, which allows me to add text. So let's just take this next one apart and do the same thing that I did the last one. You can see that these are all structured identically. By the way, I'm adding carriage return line feeds in here. In other words, these space lines, those are all stripped out, so you can put as many lines of spaces or spaces between lines in your HTML. It doesn't matter. HTML totally ignores it, and when I generate this to from XML to HTML, that text, those extra lines just disappear. And I can show you that in a minute. As a matter of fact, I can show you right now by right-clicking a browser window and choosing View Source. I can see the code here. So this first one, div, notice that the code is all stretched out with spaces and carriage return line feeds removed because they don't mean anything in HTML. So let's take a look at, there's the href here, the anchor structure starts here, then the title, and then the image, the close anchor, and the exit application, and the closing of the div. So that represents, that's the same as this code here. Once I opened it up, you can see it's identical. As I mentioned, one of the first things that when you start looking at HTML, it's all kind of jammed together and cluttered and impossible to read because HTML ignores spaces and carriage return line feeds and so on. Any character that isn't represented as an HTML tag or an HTML construct just is ignored, and that's a little confusing to the human eye. And so HTML is not easy to write because, first of all, it's cluttered looking. So we try to make this a little easier for you by giving you these embed points, and these embed points are, as I've said, a lot like Clarion embed points in the standpoint that depending on where the embed point is, turns out it appears in a certain area of the window, and I'll deal with that in another video and try to explain what each of these tags does. I haven't fully decided how many tags there are going to be. There are tags right now for certain that represent certain parts of this window, and when you put them in there, I have a default design of how that will look. As I said, don't worry about that. This is a template, or these are templates, so I will provide a wide variety of design templates that let you create a wide variety of window styles, plus any one of those styles or window designs is still completely under your control without you having to make huge strides in XML or HTML design. So let's take a look now at how this text that I'm adding here, how does that text end up in this little red box, and the box ends up being certain size and so on. First of all, the boxes that I'm using here is reasonably small, so it can be made to accept extra text, but because these boxes that I've designed are percentages of the window size, in order to make the tiles bigger and smaller as I make the window bigger and smaller, what you're going to see is that you need to use percentages of the window width. And so as if I fill this text box full of a whole bunch of text, then it's going to, some of these boxes little text areas would be bigger or smaller, and the tiles won't wrap evenly. So I'm trying to keep my text to fit within the space provided. Certainly one of the nice features of HTML is that it deals with these size issues and wrapping and so on automatically. And of course, I could give this text box the characteristic to say if the text exceeds the size of the box, then just cut it off. I could do that too. But in this case, I don't want to go there yet. That's a little early. It's a little early in this talk to be dealing with that. Let's just see what I've done to make this little red box and to make the text white in that little red box. The little red box I'm talking about is this div class called Tile. So if I search down here in here for something called, can you see this? Yes, you can. Div Tile. Here in the area below the actual design is the code. It's CSS code that represents all these boxes on the window. This represents the entire HTML design, what fonts, what's the default font size in the HTML, and so on and so on and so on. There's a body section, which is the body section, because it fits inside the HTML section, is derives most of, this is cascading style sheets, so the design cascades from the top to the bottom. Just to point that out, let's look inside the HTML here quickly, and you see that the first tag in the document is HTML, and then there's a head tag, a title tag inside the head tag, and then there's a style section. This is where HTML likes you to put the style sheets, and then the closing of the style tag and the closing of the head tag, and then the start of the body tag. So the body tag is inside the HTML tag. Everything cascades. So I have an inner tag inside that called CHT body. This is a made-up style sheet, which determines this kind of white boxy area that you see here. I want that boxy area to be inside the body area, which is the gray, total gray area. So everything is inside boxes inside boxes. There's div header, that represents this box, and you can see that div header as its own color scheme and so on. It's got a radius, 10 pixel radius, that causes this box to be round and so on. And there's header text that represents these this text here, and subheader text that represents this text here. You can see the amount of description that you're able to put on each of these. I've got more description than I need because some of it cascades from the HTML tag, but by showing them here, that makes them immediately available for you to modify should you want to. And here's div tile. So this represents, div tile represents that little box, all these little boxes. So first of all, the position is relative, which means the box appears after the next box, or in the first available slot. So after this box renders, then that box renders relative to the other box until it runs out of space, and then it wraps down to the bottom. And that's all done. You don't need to code for that. It does that when you say that this is relative. The font families are usually done. I want Segway UI, but if that isn't available on the machine, the browser will insert to home or Arial or whatever's available. The font style is regular, which basically means the font unbolded or unitalicized. I set font size in this case because I want the font to be fairly small to fit in that box at 50%, which is relative. So as the tile gets bigger, the text will appear bigger. This is 50% of the font size that's set on the page, and I believe I pointed out that the font size would set to 13 point. So this would be roughly a 7 point, depending on, of course, how big the window is. Now, this is interesting. The box color has been set to crimson. There you have it there. Now, if I set this to black and perform a preview, you see what you do here with this editor previewer relationship is exactly what you do when you're designing a Clarion screen. You get immediate feedback as you put a control on the window, or if you change a color, you get immediate feedback simply by pushing preview or the F5 key. So let's just put that back to crimson, and I hit F5, and you see that the color changes back. The color of the text is, oh, by the way, this is top and left. That means the top of the box fits exactly. Remember, this is relative positioning, so the top of the box fits exactly at the relative position with 0 positions down or 0 positions left. So the box isn't moved left or right from its natural position. Whatever position it naturally falls on, it zeroes in on that from the top and the left. The color of the text is white. I could set that to, let's color its contrast with red, blue, let's say, and we'll push F5, and that obviously doesn't work, so we'll set that back to white. And these boxes are slightly rounded. I have a border radius of them on them of 3 pixels. I could set that to 10 pixels, but it'll look like crap. But you can see that the tiles are now a bit more rounded, and it doesn't look like crap. It doesn't look bad, actually. I might leave that. Anyway, back to 3 pixels. The border style, there's a border around these boxes, and it's set to solid, which means a solid line. The border width is 3 pixels. I could set that border width to 10 pixels just to show you. That's what that does. Notice that it changes. Since I'm still working with the same amount of space, it causes the tiles to wrap, but that was very smooth. So we'll set that back to 3 pixels. Three pixels, there we go. And then the wrapping is handled again. So remember what I'm doing. I'm simply editing a style sheet called Div Tile, which represents that tile. And it's all the characteristics that I think are important. It isn't all of the characteristics of that tile, but all of the ones that I've considered to be important. I've talked about the border radius, that it's a solid border, that the border width 3 pixels, and that the border color is silver. Now the width and height of the tile, I mentioned this I think earlier in this talk, is the width is handled as a percentage rather than a fixed width. So in order for the windows to be able to display the tiles in such a way that they fit in small windows, they fit in big windows, I've set the width and height of the tiles to be a percentage of the window. So this width of the tile is 18%, and that's extremely arbitrary. I chose that because it fit in the kind of window sizes I was intending to use. If you have bigger windows or smaller windows, or you want the tiles to be smaller or bigger, you can change these percentages. And why don't I do that? Let's just say 25%. And of course that changes the wrapping aspect, and it doesn't fit as nicely in the kind of average window sizes that I like to use. So I've set that to 18%. And you can't, this isn't perfect in the sense that because you're using percentages, it depends pretty much what you see it depends pretty much on what the user is causing the application window to do. But as you know, with certain devices, you are stuck with certain window shapes, and this percentage seems to work nicely in the window shape that I'm having to deal with. This is important. This float characteristic of that box is set to left. So as the window wraps, or as the window size changes, like that, or as if I drag this window size out, the boxes will always float to the left. They'll align themselves with the box on the left. The first box aligns with the edge of this inner body, which I've set a margin on, and then this box floats left, that box floats left against that one, but that box floats left against that one. Now, why doesn't it float against the box that's immediately ahead of it? Well, I have put a margin of 0.5%. So this margin is been made to appear all the way around the box. So this is the top margin, the right hand margin, the bottom margin, and the left hand margin. I've set them all the same. So that is basically the white line that's all the way around here. There's a margin of 0.5% of the window around all the boxes. The text in the boxes has been centered, as you can see, the text here. Remember, I'm still talking about this Div Tile box. That's this box. So the text in that has been made to center, and I've set text overflow to clip, which means if I were to put too much text in here, it would be clipped off rather than causing the box to change shape. The box is clip. Now, clip, as I've discovered, only works if you have a fixed box size. So because these box sizes are set as percentages, if the text gets big, then the box will simply repercentage itself, and so that's an aspect of text overflow that seems to, at least in this version of the browser, seems to only overflow if the box is a fixed size. In other words, you write text wouldn't fit in the box, it clips it. In this case, I haven't put text that overflows, so that text overflow characteristic isn't really necessary, and I'll play around with that to see how we can deal with longer text in a box size which is proportional to the window. Okay, so that's the description of the tile, and the construct here in the embed point message area 1. And by the way, that embed point is message area 1. It's the first area. Message area 1 is the first area below the header. Every message area starts with a header, and in this case there's no header. It's simply carriage return line feed to bring this down a little bit, and then there's a message area. I could create a message area 2 with another bunch of text in it if I wanted to, but I'm not using message area 2. I'm simply using message area 3 as a place to put the tiles. It's just a convenient spot that says this is on the main part of the window. Here's what I want you to do. So in the main part of the window, I have a bunch of tiles represented by div. The class is tile. It's another div.tile is the class, and in a div area, I want the div area supervised by the tile CSS class. And so I have a bunch of these tiles. Each one of those div tiles, close div, div tile, close div, div tile, represents one of these tiles. And this code, as I mentioned, inside the div tile is an A anchor, close A anchor, and some text, and close div. So that's essentially the working of these XML templates. When we hit preview, at the moment, this preview is being sent to HTML Document Builder, in which I think I have that app loaded. We'll load it quickly. I have two procedures in here. One which handles most of the generic documents. There's one that handles receipts, and I'll talk about that in another of these videos as I fully document with videos HTML document builder. This is a procedure which basically looks inside these embed points, throws out the empty embed points, just doesn't do anything with them. It says it's empty, nothing there, forget about it. So if there's an embed point that you're not using in this layout, you can simply delete it. Doesn't make any difference because it would ignore them anyway, and it takes away the visual clutter that you would normally see with these embed points. No point leaving them there if you're not going to use them. These embed points, this procedure takes the embed points, creates an HTML file, and fills the embed points based on the name that you put on the embed point, places them in different parts of text. Different embed points. These embed points, as I have them, are pre-named. So every embed point has a name and it has a specific purpose. So the trick to learning this will be, what specific purpose is this embed point? And we'll have to document that to a considerable extent, so you know that a certain embed point appears in a certain part of the HTML. And also, certain embed points have tags put, HTML tags put on them automatically to save you having to do it. The message area tags, embed points, are basically, if you put nothing in them, there's no embellishment added to it, there's no font change or anything done specifically to the message areas, but the header areas have H1 or embellishment tags added to them automatically. And I've even started to rethink that I may take those out of there. We'll see. This isn't cast in stone yet, because I'm still playing with how this XML will generate in the most flexible manner. One of the things that I will be playing with is another master embed point. This embed point is where the CSS section, include section, comes with the HTML, with the template, and that describes how this CSS section describes how the text will look in this document once it's generated. Different templates that I produce will have different CSS sections. What that does is saves you from having to do that, and it allows an infinite variety of screen designs which are encapsulated inside that XML document, and they will generate into the HTML when you issue the preview here. And that allows a wide variety of design. Of course, if you take one of these XML documents, let's say, and copy it, and then create one called joeblow.xml, then I don't have any customers called Joe Blow, but you get the idea. If you save that under a different name, then that becomes your document, and you have full control. In all cases, you have full control over every aspect of that window. The same as if you're designing a Clarion window, you have control over every aspect of that window, and what you do on one window is not necessarily what you do on the next window. However, you can guarantee that once you have one of these, taken one of my designs and modified it in a way that you like, then you can just clone that design over and over again and make specific changes to just the window portion, or the text portion of the window, or the control portion of the window, and leave the CSS portion alone. But trust me, as you get experience with this, you'll be tweaking this XML design, or the CSS design, as you go from window to window, the same as when you're doing a Clarion window. And but it helps to have a baseline to start with. So I expect that you will use the XML window design examples that I've given, and then clone them and make your own from them and insert them into your Clarion windows and eventually into your HTML windows. So I hope you get the gist of where this is going. This follows the design paradigm of Clarion with embed points, putting no more in an embed point than is necessary to get the end result. And eventually, as I was going to say, there will be an embed point here called, don't know what I call it yet, probably JavaScript. Should spell it correctly. This doesn't exist yet, but in which I will provide templates with pre-built JavaScript. And some of that pre-built JavaScript, we will get our Clarion templates to generate for you, so that JavaScript can be inserted only as much JavaScript is needed to make this page work standalone in a browser. For instance, when you click on a button, what do you have to do in JavaScript to make it go to open a window, let's say a form, that sort of thing. And of course, how do I take the text? How do I take the form fields on an HTML form? How do I get the data off the remote server to make it display in this field? That's the kind of JavaScript. So that in your embed sections, you will simply here create a form, and I'll show you how to do that as well. And that form will have an event attached to it that causes the form to update when you push the update button, and it causes the form to pull data from the server when you push another button, or that sort of thing, or when the page opens. So that's where we're going with this. I'll try to take it as slow as possible. I'm hoping that you will attempt to do some of this stuff on your own using this CHT. I should save that, I guess, to use the document builder and to load some of these templates. This one here, and display them, or open the document and see what's inside, and then attempt to preview them from the editor and mess with them a little bit. You can't break them as long as you don't, as long as you work with a copy. If you change these, no harm done. You can always throw away your copy and go back to the original that I supplied. But this is what I'm doing. Again, trying to create a variety of screen designs and templates of this sort that do, let's say, at least half or more of the work for you to get a design that you like. And I'll try to take this in baby steps as we go along and show you different designs that you can try on your windows, the way that we have with the way that I'm doing now with tile menus. From tile menus, we'll probably go to next to a form design. Let's say, let me create an HTML form design. In other words, a window, Clarion window, that has an HTML form in it, but let me fill that form, that HTML form on the window from local text. In other words, using Clarion techniques. And then once you've got that, then we'll slide you over. Let's try this form design now with remote data and running in a browser so that we can suck the data into the form inside a browser, completely devoid of using a Clarion application. Our servers are all ready to be able, that can handle this already. They've been able to handle this kind of thing for years. We've been packaging data in various forms depending on how you call the server, and we've got remote stored procedures, remote procedures on our that you can install to your servers, which can handle almost any kind of request. You could make up a request style to get data into these forms and do it your own way. I've got something like that already working, which I'm going to probably deal with in the next couple of videos, or at least one, how we produce a receipt for you using this technique and using Handy Document Builder to give you an HTML based receipt, but the data isn't coming off my machine, it's coming off of our server, that sort of thing. So I'm trying to get you to use the embed point concept, in a template, in this case an XML template with embed points, into which you would put text, into which you would put snippets of HTML and so forth. I will also improve the editor as time goes on to be able to produce on hotkeys to produce HTML structures so you don't have to write it. So if you want an HTML tile, bingo, you hit a key, Control T, and a tile structure appears immediately below your cursor, and then you can put your own text into that, your own images and so on into that tile. That's where we're going with this. Try to take it baby steps at a time, and now to try to give you a way to conveniently and in the most Clarion-like way that I can conceive of, which is code preview, code preview, code preview till you get what you want, and always have it available in such a way that it actively shows you what it's going to look like in a browser, what it's going to look like in the Clarion window, without guesswork, and as much design by preview as I can possibly work into it. And I think, but with baby steps, I can get you to if you want to, get you all the way from Clarion to a full HTML design that runs in the browser using CHT servers, data servers that are basically not on your machine. They can be, but that are either remote or local, as you prefer, and to get designs which move smoothly, transition smoothly, and work both inside Clarion and in the browser. The potential is vast, and this will get you off of dependency, which Clarion now forces on you, because Clarion is basically a Windows development platform, and that's fine. It's served us well over the years, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with staying exclusively with Windows. But where I see us headed, and where it appears to be headed, is a far more robust and flexible environment that if developers care to expand their horizons, will from Clarion, there is a smooth transition from Clarion and using Clarion with CHT. There is a fairly smooth transition from one platform to the next, or jumping back and forth from one platform to the next. And in theory, this design approach allows you to use the same design either on a Clarion, inside a Clarion app, as I've shown you, or I will show you the tile menu working in a 100% Windows environment, browser environment. So that's enough for now. This is getting a bit long. We'll leave it there, and we'll catch you in the next video.